Lo guys, this is your friend here back a new fanfic. Part 1 this fanfic link in description, and if enjoy you this fanfic then please press the like button and please subscribe to channel for more fanfic upload. Now let's start fanfic. It was 13 years since the nine-tailed fox attacked the village hidden in the leaves, and the fourth Hokage sealed the fox inside an innocent little boy in hopes of him being treated as a hero of the village, but his wishes were unanswered because after he died the villagers thought the boy was the fox itself and made his life miserable. This brave child's name is Naruto Uzumaki, the container of the nine-tailed fox and the hero of Konoha, but to most of the village the demon that plagues the village. Naruto is now 13 years old and attempting to pass the test to become a genin of the village and become Hokage so everyone would acknowledge him and not call him a demon. The teacher Iruka called out names and then he said, "Naruto Uzumaki, it's time for you to take the test." So Naruto stood up and went into the room to do the jutsus they want. Iruka looked at Naruto and wished him good luck because he really wanted Naruto to pass the exam. Okay. First to a transformation into the third Hokage. Naruto nodded and transformed into the third Hokage, and then after a minute he dispelled and waited for the next jutsu. Okay. Now do a substitution. Naruto nodded again and did what he was told. After all that, Iruka sighed and said the last jutsu. Okay. Perform the clone jutsu. Naruto's sweat dropped because this is the only jutsu he couldn't do no matter how much he tried. Iruka waited and Mizuki smirked, knowing the demon wouldn't pass. Naruto any time would be nice, said Mizuki, and Naruto nodded. Naruto started all the necessary hand signs for the jutsu and then built up his chakra and said, "Clone jutsu," but to his disappointment they were dead and pathetic looking, and Iruka had no choice but to say that he failed. Naruto couldn't believe it. He tried too hard but all that went to waste, so at the last moment Naruto rushed out of the classroom trying to hold back his tears from all the insults the other kids were giving him as he was running. Naruto just kept on running away, not stopping no matter what the villagers were saying about him, and before he knew it he was at the forest of death like all those times he went there when he was a kid because of the villagers. Naruto entered the forest and just kept walking, not knowing what he is going to do now. He just couldn't take it anymore and started crying. I've tried so hard but I still can't do it and all the villagers make it harder. Maybe it would be better if I wasn't alive anymore. While Naruto's thoughts kept getting darker, he all of a sudden heard a sound of sticks breaking and went to check it out since he had nothing to really lose. Naruto snuck up to the person that was causing the noise, and after finding said person he was left breathless. The person Naruto was looking at was one of the most beautiful women he has ever seen. She had lovely creamy white skin and she had magnificent black hair, and to his surprise the outfit she was wearing, which consisted of a red small jacket with a gray and black tank top as well as short gray jean shorts which showed of her creamy white legs. Naruto kept checking her out and every minute he did his cheeks kept getting redder. Naruto was about to say hello until he accidentally stepped on a twig and alerting that beautiful woman to his presence. Orochimaru was looking around for the hidden lab until she heard a twig snap and right away turned around to find a short kid with spiky blonde hair and blue ocean eyes wearing an ugly orange jumpsuit looking at her with curiously. Orochimaru right away panicked and transformed into her male form and disappeared right behind the kid. Naruto was looking at her and then noticed her do some hand signs and all of a sudden she transformed into a guy and vanished, and next thing he knew there was a kunai at his throat. Naruto tried to gulp but was afraid what the guy girl would do to him if he made any slight movements. Orochimaru was staring at the kid wondering what he was doing in the forest since it's the most dangerous place to be in, and decided to ask the kid herself, "Hey kid, what are you doing inside the forest of death?" Naruto was startled when she started to speak to him and decided to answer since it wouldn't be in his best interest to make her mad. "This is where I go when the villagers try to kill me or when I feel very sad." Orochimaru's eyes widened after hearing that and decided to ask the kid when he was born, and Naruto said, "I was born 13 years ago, That confirmed Orochimaru's suspicions that he is a Jinchuriki and decided to ask the kid another question. Boy, do you want to leave this accursed village? Naruto was surprised at that question, but wanted to answer it either way. Yes, there's barely anyone that treats me good here and I'm sick of it. Orochimaru smiled and nodded her head. Naruto looked at the woman that's transformed as a guy and decided to ask her about the transformation. Ah, miss, why did you transform into a guy when clearly you're very beautiful and don't need to hide your appearance? Orochimaru was taken back by the compliment, but had a smile on her face while turning around to face Naruto, and she said, "Why Naruto, are you hitting on me?" Naruto's face went red and he tried to deny it, which made Orochimaru laugh, and she gave Naruto a hug still in a guy form and told him why she transformed. Naruto, do you know who I am? Naruto looked up and shook his head, which caused Orochimaru to sigh, and then she continued. My name is Orochimaru and I'm the legendary snake Sannin who was condemned a traitor for doing illegal experimentations on human beings. Orochimaru let all that sink into Naruto's head and waited for him to push her away or scream and try to kill her. But instead he just hugged her male body tighter and said, I don't care what you did, you're the only person to ever really be kind to me and hug me like this. Orochimaru decided she could trust Naruto and dispelled her jutsu to make her a female again, which got a surprise bloody nose from Naruto because he went from hugging her guy form to having C-cup breasts squishing against his face, and she couldn't help but giggle at his reaction and continued on her explanation about her jutsu. Well Naruto, the reason I transform into a guy is because the legendary snake Sannin is known to be a guy, and if they found out that I'm a female and they somehow captured me, she waited to say it because it was pretty hard for her to imagine what would happen to her. But then Naruto tightened the hug on her, which made her feel better, and she decided to continue. They would make me stay in a cell, and I know from battle experience that Danzo would make the root Anbu rape me until I gave them powerful children, and the Hokage will pretend like nothing was happening. Orochimaru was trying not to cry. But it was pretty hard because she knew that's what would happen if she got captured. But what really surprised her was Naruto growled, and she looked down only to see his eyes went from ocean blue to demonic red with black slits. I won't let anyone hurt my Orochi-chan. Orochimaru raised her eyebrow and asked Naruto, so when did I become yours, Naruto-kun? Naruto blushed and stuttered incoherently, and Orochimaru couldn't help but giggle at him. It felt nice and it felt right to be with him, so she asked Naruto one more question, do you want to come with me? Naruto didn't even hesitate to answer her, and she smiled at him. They were both walking for some time, and finally Orochimaru found her hidden hideout where she used to do experiments when she was a part of the village. Orochimaru turned around and asked Naruto to wait outside so she could collect some things, and Naruto nodded, not wanting to make her mad by asking if he can go in as well. Orochimaru saw him pout and she bent down and kissed him on the cheek, which in turn caused his face to turn red with steam coming out, and Orochimaru couldn't help but giggle and said, "You're just so fun to tease, Naruto-kun." Naruto waited outside for Orochimaru to come out, and after a few minutes she finally came out saying, "Are you ready to go, Naruto-kun?" Naruto nodded happily and they both disappeared after that. 2 years later. The Leaf Village Hokage was sitting in his desk waiting for any report showing any hint where Naruto could be. Not a lot of people missed Naruto, and some most actually threw parties that the demon was gone, which were stopped by the Hokage, but they kept on partying even after the Hokage reprimanded them. Most of the kids Naruto knew when he was in the academy didn't care that he was gone. The only ones that really noticed were Hinata, Shikamaru, Lee, and Choji, and the only teacher was Iruka. Of course they weren't the only ones that missed the blonde ball of energy. Ikarakus missed its favorite customer and the Hokage missed him as well. Hidden Sound Village. Naruto was walking down the streets looking for something to eat until he heard a girl scream and right away went to save whoever it was. Naruto arrived at a sight that disgusted him to no end. Three guys were trying to rape a young girl about his age and Naruto would have none of that. He appeared near the first guy and shoved his hand through the guy's heart, which got a surprised gasp from the other two guys because they were sweating bullets being near the demon of the sound. Naruto looked down at the young girl and saw her flinch, which in turn caused him to look away because he knew Kyuubi's eyes were scaring her, so he turned back to the two guys that were trying to run away, but didn't get the chance because Naruto charged them saying, "Fire style. Flaming bomb jutsu," and both the guys got caught in the blast, causing them both to die together with screams of agony and pain occupying them. After Naruto finished them off, he went to check if the girl was okay, and to his relief she only had some cuts and a couple of bruises. Kin looked at the boy who saved her from a fate worse than death and said thank you to him, which he turned around to and smiled at her. Kin looked at his smile and it just melted her and made her feel safe, like nobody can hurt her. Then she looked up and saw his eyes, but this time she wasn't scared of them and could only say one thing when she saw them: beautiful. Naruto was surprised that she said that and couldn't help remember that he said the same thing to the Kyuubi when he first met her. 1 year ago, Hidden Sound Village. Orochi-chan, why do you want me to meet the Kyuubi? Orochimaru smiled at him and said, Naruto, you're a kind and sweet boy and I think only you could melt the hatred inside the Kyuubi's heart like you did with mine. Naruto nodded and asked how was he supposed to contact the Kyuubi, and Orochimaru answered that with a hard punch to the stomach and a perverted grin, saying, oh, and you better hurry up or I might do something to your body that in my opinion you would love. As he was slipping into unconsciousness, he saw her give him a wink. Naruto woke up in a sewer and the first thing he thought about was how much of a dump this place was, but all his complaining was ended with a growl that echoed through the halls, and to any sane person they would have run away, but not Naruto. He was memorized by that growl and wanted to know more about the creature that the growl came from. Naruto kept on walking on what looked like an endless hallway and was about to quit until he went through an entrance and ended up in front of a large cell with two huge red eyes with black slits. The Kyuubi saw Naruto enter and wanted to scare him by glaring at him, but to his surprise Naruto just kept on smiling, so the Kyuubi decided on a different approach. Well, what is my jailer doing here? Naruto looked up and kept on smiling at the nine-tailed fox and then did the one thing not even a crazy person would do. He went inside the prison bars and stood right in front of the nine tails like it was nothing. Kyuubi looked down at the human in surprise and remembered in all its time being trapped inside its hosts, not one of them were brave enough or crazy enough to go inside the bars. Naruto stood in front of the fox waiting for it to do something, and to his relief the fox just smiled and said, well, you sure are one interesting human to come in here and not be scared for his life. Naruto smiled and yelled, I really like your fur. Kyuubi was beyond surprised now and smirked at Naruto. Why aren't you just a little charmer? Naruto laughed and walked around the cage while the Nine-Tails was sizing him up, and if you looked closely enough you could see a tiny blush on the Nine-Tails' cheeks. For a human he is quite handsome, the Nine-Tails thought. After Naruto was done looking around, he then asked the Nine-Tails if he could change his mindscape, and to his surprise the Nine-Tails licked Naruto, which in his case he considered gross because its tongue got all of him, so now his cloths were slobbery. But then he heard the Nine-Tails saying, thank you Naruto, I was getting sick of being in this sewer. Naruto then concentrated on changing the mindscape into a lush green open field with lots of foxes and animals, as well as a house for the Nine-Tails to sleep in. But he had other things on his mind. Why did the Kyuubi's voice sound feminine when it thanked me? Kyuubi couldn't help but to look around in awe because it was so beautiful. Then she turned around and saw a smiling Naruto and decided to give him a reward. Naruto stared at a shrinking Kyuubi and then felt something tackling him. When he looked up he saw a girl with red hair and a red and black kimono, but what really got him were the fluffy and cute red fox ears and red fox tails with black tips. When she opened her eyes and looked at him she thought he would reject her, but instead she heard him say, your eyes are beautiful. She felt so happy that she didn't think about what she was doing and just kissed Naruto on the lips, which he moaned to because of how soft her luscious lips were. They kept on making out for about a good minute until he felt his lower half hardening and he was afraid that she might think that he is a pervert, but instead she smiled and leaned in and whispered, "Are you getting excited by little old me?" Naruto laughed at that and retorted with, "Haha, old you, yay right. You're too beautiful and fun and cute," and he didn't get to finish because she glomped him again and captured his lips. This time she moaned because she felt his tongue around her lips and opened her mouth to allow him entrance into her. It felt amazing. Naruto finally pushed her away before he would do something that he wouldn't regret. "Ah, Kyuubi, it's nice and all to kiss you, but I want to talk about something with you." Kyuubi looked down and knew that he was probably going to ask her about his parents or why she attacked the village, but to her surprise he instead asked, "How do you feel about being free?" She couldn't hold it in anymore and just attacked her blonde-headed hero. Naruto wasn't surprised by her action and just hugged her back. Then he told her, "You just have to wait a year, deal?" She nodded and he left his mindscape. Orochimaru was just reminiscing when all of a sudden Kabuto walked in asking Orochimaru, "What's wrong?" And Orochimaru answered with, "Nothing." Orochimaru decided to check up on her favorite student since she was done playing around with her poisons. Naruto arrived at the hideout and went inside only to meet Kabuto. "Oh, Naruto, it's just you. I thought you were an intruder." Naruto looked at him and said, "Nope, just me." "Kabuto, can you help me out with Kin here? She is kind of injured." Kabuto took note of the girl in his arms and couldn't help but laugh. "Haha, Naruto, you just can't help bringing home strays. You're too good-hearted to be with Orochimaru." Naruto's smirk vanished and then came an unexpected amount of bloodlust that rivals Orochimaru. Kabuto's eyes widen and he has a hard time breathing in Naruto's presence while Kin felt fine. "What was that, Kabuto? I couldn't hear you." Kabuto realized he just said something that could get him killed and decided to take back his statement, seeing how powerful the blonde is. Kyuubi felt the spike in bloodlust and concluded that it must have been Naruto getting pissed off, so she transformed into her fox spirit form and leapt off his bed and ran to her lover. On the way she found Orochimaru with a smile on her face and decided to join her. So she leapt onto Orochimaru's right shoulder and dug her tiny claws into Orochimaru's clothing so she wouldn't fall off. Orochimaru noticed a tiny fox on her shoulder, still in a male body henge, and smiled at it as they both went on there to meet up with Naruto. Both Orochimaru and Kyuubi at first didn't like each other, but after a while they both found a lot of things they like about Naruto and how they both hated the Hidden Leaf Village on how they treated their Naruto-kun, so they became friends pretty quickly, which Naruto was happy about because his two favorite girls could be the best of friends and watch each other's backs. Orochimaru decided to ask Q-chan how the seal between them is doing and her response was, "Oh, the seal is amazing. I still don't believe you and Naruto came up with the idea of body link seal where both of us can use 9 tails of power like we were two separate entities." Orochimaru gave her a smile and said, "I'm glad you like it. Naruto worked especially hard since he didn't want you to lose all the power you have obtained, and I thought that was very sweet of him." Kyuubi blushed and was glad that her fur was hiding it because she too was happy when Naruto said that she would still retain all her power, just it would be like there are 2 9-tailed foxes instead of 1. Both Orochimaru and Kyuubi arrived at a scene that had them laughing because Kabuto being lectured by Naruto. Naruto noticed Orochimaru and Kyuubi and decided to stop lecturing Kabuto and ask Orochimaru to help Kin. Orochimaru saw Naruto walk up to her with a girl in his arms and right away thought, "Darn it, Naruto, why do you have to be such a nice guy? I don't like to share." Naruto looked at Orochimaru and asked, "Sensei, can you look at Kin for me?" Orochimaru smiled and told Naruto to follow her, and Naruto did that. Kabuto got up and followed them since at the moment he had nothing better to do. Kyuubi decided at that moment to jump on top of Naruto's head and lay down. Naruto lifted his hand up and petted Q-chan gently to show her that he loves her. They all arrived at a little nurse's office where Orochimaru had Kin lay down on the bed, and when Orochimaru was about to check her injuries until a foul-mouthed girl walked in carrying a big guy. Hey Snake Tem, I need you to fix this guy because I think I broke him. Naruto got a tick mark on his head because of how she was treating his snake Heim with such disrespect. Orochimaru noticed this and was going to save the girl from Naruto's wrath, but decided against it because that girl needs to learn some respect for her betters, and also Orochimaru loved how Naruto treated her like a princess. Naruto walked up to the disrespectful girl and grabbed her by the collar, growling out, "How dare you treat Orochimaru with such disrespect?" Tayuya scoffed at this and retorted, "What are you, gay or something for this little boy fucker, huh? Shithead." Naruto got another tick mark because he didn't care how she called him names and treated him like trash. But when you treat one of his Heims with such disrespect, he will make that person pay. Say that again, bitch. I dare you. Tayuya smirked and was about to say it again until Naruto hit her with a full blast of bloodlust and killer intent to make even Orochimaru's sweat drop. Naruto just stared at her with his red chakra radiating bloodlust and his red eyes with black slits showing that he wasn't playing around. Tayuya was about to say something until Kin opened her eyes on the bed and saw Tayuya being held up by Naruto. Kin was worried because Tayuya was being held up, and Kin could tell that Tayuya was very scared of the person that was holding her up but was trying to keep her tough girl act on. Kin decided to break the tension by saying, "Tayuya, is that you?" Tayuya looked over Naruto to find Kin on a bed and right away got out of Naruto's grasp somehow and ran to Kin. "Kin-chan, are you okay? Nothing happened to you, right?" Kin only smiled on how her best friend acted and said, "No, everything is fine. Naruto-kun saved me from some gross men who were going to do things to me." Tayuya was happy to hear that Naruto saved her best friend from some sound ninja and responded by tackling Naruto and giving him a bone-crushing hug. "Thank you, Naruto. Thank you." Naruto sighed and rubbed her head. He couldn't stay mad at her when she is this happy but thought of a way to get her to treat Orochimaru with more respect. "Tayuya, how about if I can get Orochimaru to let Kin stay with you and ask him to train her as well, then will you treat him with more respect?" Tayuya looked at Naruto and decided to take the deal since it was a bit far-fetched. There's no way Orochimaru would agree to that, she thought. Naruto nodded and went up to Orochimaru and asked, "Orochimaru, can Kin stay with Tayuya and can you train her as well?" Orochimaru thought about it and then said, "Fine. Only if I can test out some of my poisons on you." And she whispered this the next part. "You spend some time with me." But with Naruto's enhanced hearing, he walked up to her ear and whispered, "I would love to spend time with my snake Heim." Orochimaru tried not to blush because that would give them the wrong impression, so she went up to Kin and asked her if she would like to be a ninja and stay with Tayuya. Kin replied right away by hugging Orochimaru, which got a mouth hanging Tayuya because she didn't believe Shithead would be able to convince Orochimaru to let Kin stay and train. Orochimaru accepted the hug and then told Kin to rest up and then went up to Tayuya and told her to keep an eye on her, which Tayuya agreed to right away. Naruto was happy to see those two talking and laughing with each other, and then he saw Kabuto smirking and decided to ask him, "Yo Kabuto, what's so funny?" Kabuto then noticed Naruto right next to him and answered, "Orochimaru never acted this kind when you were not around. It just makes me wonder what you did to make him act the way he does now." Naruto smirked and in his mind thought of a reason. Could be because she finally found someone to trust with her secret, or maybe because she finally found someone that loves her with all his heart. Orochimaru then decided to leave the two girls alone and walked outside the room door, which Naruto noticed and followed behind her with Kyuubi on his head and Kabuto right behind him. Orochimaru walked in the middle while Kabuto walked on her left and Naruto walked on her left, while all three of them talked about different kinds of experiments which mostly consisted of poisons and ways to strengthen the body. When all three of them arrived at Orochimaru's lab, Naruto right away regretted the deal because he saw the sinister smile on her face telling him that she was going to enjoy this. Kabuto was wondering about something and decided to make his ask about his thoughts. Orochimaru-sama, wouldn't Naruto die if you subjugated him with your poisons? Orochimaru turned around and answered Kabuto while telling Naruto to take off his shirt. Well Kabuto, since Naruto is a Jinchuriki his body can take a lot of different kinds of injuries and heal without a problem and one of those things would be poison which I make Naruto here get injected with because if the poison can affect a Jinchuriki then the poison is strong enough to affect anyone. Don't you agree Naruto? Naruto shivered when Orochimaru put her smooth hand on his arm and then she got out a needle containing some purple liquid. Are you ready, Naruto? Naruto looked her in the eyes and smiled while nodding and after she saw Naruto nod she injected the liquid into his arm and watched the effects it had on him. At first nothing was happening but after a couple of minutes Naruto noticed his veins becoming purple and his body started to shut down as if he was already dead. Orochimaru watched in fascination on how his veins turned purple and his body went limp all of a sudden while she was looking at him. She couldn't help but lick her lips which didn't get unnoticed by Kabuto because he was shivering when he saw Orochimaru lick his lips. Orochimaru decided that she got enough data and told Naruto to get up which Kabuto had to retort with, Orochimaru-sama, how do you expect him to ge? Kabuto didn't get to finish because he was too shocked seeing Naruto get up like it was nothing. Naruto looked at Kabuto and laughed at seeing his surprised face and when he saw Orochimaru leave he decided to follow her leaving Kabuto all alone thinking about what he just saw. Orochimaru saw Naruto behind her and then noticed the little nine-tailed fox sleeping on top of his head. Naruto, do you think I should become Otokage of the Hidden Sound Village? Naruto stopped when she said that and gave her a big smile. Yes I do, you're really strong and I wish you could show your true self but I love you either way. I want to become one of your Anbu and only yours. Orochimaru couldn't help but have a little pink show on her cheeks after he said that to her. They both after that kept on walking to the Otokage Tower, but were stopped by some of the Hidden Sound Village's ninja. Hey where do you think you're going, Orochimaru? Both Naruto and Orochimaru could hear the disgust in his voice after saying her name. Orochimaru didn't really care how they used her name but she looked to her right and saw Naruto trying to restrain himself from slaughtering these fools and she could tell the Kyuubi is trying to do the same. Orochimaru couldn't help and be happy because of how much both Kyuubi and Naruto cared for her since no one has really cared about her in her life. Naruto was gripping his own hand to restrain himself from killing these idiots for disrespecting his snake Hime and he could tell from the low growls on top of his head that Kyuubi wasn't faring any better. Orochimaru sighed and then said, I'm here to become Otokage of the Hidden Sound Village. The three guys looked at one another laughing in the process. Haha, you want to become Otokage? That's funny. We don't trash running our village. Naruto knew that was his last straw so he moved so fast it would make the yellow flash green with envy and appeared in front of the middle guy. Naruto glared at the guy with his fox eyes and lifted him up by the collar of his jacket. Don't you dare call Orochimaru trash. The only trash here is you and you should feel honored that Orochimaru wants to be Otokage of this pathetic village. The other two were about to attack Naruto until one of them fell on the floor foaming out his mouth thanks to Orochimaru and the other got sent flying into a tree thanks to a humanized Kyuubi. Naruto then let the trash down and growled, you will take us to the Otokage's tower if you want to live. The guy nodded like crazy and started walking while thinking what he got himself into. Orochimaru, Naruto and Kyuubi kept walking with the sound ninja in front of them until they reached the tower which the ninja took as a sign that he could go and ran away as fast as he could to get away from these monsters. All three of them went inside the tower and came across the Otokage's room. Orochimaru looked at Naruto and he smiled motioning her to go in while the person on the other side heard the door opening and saw a boy, a man, and a woman. Orochimaru noticed a man at the desk and could right away tell that this man was not a ninja considering he doesn't have any guards and couldn't sense them outside the door. The man saw the girl and right away said, "Wow. That is a hot-looking slut you got me." That statement didn't go so well with Naruto because the next thing the guy knew he was bleeding out his throat with a kid right next to him holding a bloody kunai. Naruto had a sinister smile on his face which made Orochimaru and Kyuubi feel hot all over, but Orochimaru decided she had a bigger job to do since now the temporary head of the Hidden Sound village was dead. Naruto, it's sweet that you care about me and Q-chan so much, but you can't go killing everybody that makes you upset, especially when I don't get to torture them first. She then gave Naruto a wicked grin which warmed Naruto's heart. While that was happening back in the Hidden Leaf village, the Hokage was very sad because he kept blaming himself for the reason that Naruto left, and he was also sad that some people didn't even notice he was gone, and the ones that actually did were few in numbers since they only amount to a handworth of people. The Hokage was thinking about appointing a successor to the village but decided against it since they might harbor very strong feelings of hate towards Naruto, and if they find him he doesn't want Naruto to suffer again. Sarutobi was about to just put his head down on his desk until Jiraiya hopped in through the window with urgent news. The Hokage was shocked to hear this. "Are you sure that this is real?" Jiraiya nodded and said, "Yes, I got reports telling me Naruto is going to be participating in the Jonin exams in our village and he's coming with the Otokage and his partner." Sarutobi nodded to this and was happy to hear that Naruto was safe but was suspicious of why he was in the Hidden Sound village because that's where Orochimaru is located. "Jiraiya, are you sure that it's Naruto and not someone hanged like him?" Jiraiya answered with a nod and the Hokage sighed. "Can you tell me how you met him?" Jiraiya nodded again said, "Well, I thank you for putting up with my computer's problems, and I also thank you for your support and faves. I will make sure to update as much as possible since you all are being very kind to me." 1 week earlier, Naruto was walking on a mission with Kyuubi in her fox form on his head and Orochimaru by his side because she left Kabuto to do the paperwork. When they got far enough from the village, Naruto turned around and asked Orochimaru to transform back into her female form, and Orochimaru couldn't help but comply because of how cute Naruto looked with those puppy dog eyes. They have been walking for a while and Orochimaru couldn't help but look at Naruto's hand because she wanted to hold it, and she wasn't known to be a shy and scared type of person, but she didn't want Naruto to hate her. Naruto looked at Orochimaru and saw her conflicting emotions on her face, so he just grabbed her hand and held onto it tight, but not enough to hurt her but enough to show her that he cares for her. Orochimaru noticed Naruto's hand holding hers and couldn't help but blush from the contact until they both heard a sound in the trees. Naruto threw a kunai in that direction and heard a thump. Orochimaru saw who was on the ground and right away disappeared and reappeared right behind him with a kunai to his throat. Jiraiya watched as the kunai was thrown his way and dodged it, but had the unlucky break of having a faulty tree branch and fell on his butt in the process. Next thing he knew, he had an angry Orochimaru behind him with a kunai pointed at his throat. Naruto narrowed his eyes at this man because he hasn't seen his Snake Heim being that mad in a while, and Kyuubi couldn't help but giggle at seeing the guy's shocked face when he saw a female version of Orochimaru. Jiraiya was too busy looking at a miniature version of the fourth Hokage to notice a kunai at his throat, but before he could call out the fourth's name, Orochimaru spoke. "Jiraiya, what are you doing here? Did the village send you to take back Naruto? Speak or die." Jiraiya noticed the look Orochimaru was giving him, so he had to choose his words carefully or he would end up dead. Jiraiya knew in this kind of situation he could not escape without a heavy injury, so he decided it would be best to surrender before it got ugly. Okay, I surrender." Jiraiya hesitated saying the next part, and that didn't go unnoticed by Naruto and the others. Naruto then went up to Jiraiya and asked him why he was watching them, and his response was, "The third told me to find you and take you back to your home." Naruto started to become angry and his eyes turned red with black slits in the process, which Kyuubi noticed and went to comfort Naruto before he did something that he might regret. Naruto noticed Kyuubi's slender arms wrap around his muscled frame and just let the rage that he was feeling disappear. Jiraiya noticed the woman that was hugging him, and the part that scared him after that were the 9 orange tails with red tips waving around her and wrapping around Naruto, embracing him in a nice hug. Jiraiya all of a sudden yelled at Naruto. Naruto, how could you let that monster escape its prison? It destroyed your hoe. Before Jiraiya was finished, he got punched by an enraged Naruto covered in his first tail form. Jiraiya looked up from the area he ended up in after Naruto punched him and noticed the destruction just one punch caused. Ah, I feel like I got hit by one of Tsunade's punches, Jiraiya thought. Naruto walked up to Jiraiya and grabbed him by the collar while growling out, "Don't ever call my fox Hime a monster or you'll regret it." Then Naruto dropped Jiraiya on the ground like a sack of potatoes and went back to comfort his love because she felt bad since she was the reason Naruto's life was horrible. Jiraiya saw Naruto hugging the 9-tailed fox and decided to leave it at that since she doesn't seem that dangerous at the moment. Jiraiya then got up and went near them to ask Naruto a question, but before he could get even 5 feet, Orochimaru pulled out the kusanagi from her mouth and pointed it at Jiraiya since she deemed him a danger to Naruto and a bully to poor Kyuubi. Jiraiya stared at the blade in front of him and was about to make a Rasengan to get rid of Orochimaru, but the glare he got from Naruto when he saw the sudden aggression coming from him got Jiraiya to think twice about what he was about to do. Jiraiya decided to ask Naruto what he was going to do, and Naruto answered, "I am going to participate in the Jonin exams and make my snake Hime proud." Jiraiya couldn't help but be proud that his student's son was already a Chunin and going to become a Jonin. Jiraiya wanted to ask him if he could train him, but with Orochimaru here he knew she might not let him go near Naruto since he was as part of the Leaf Village. Naruto saw Orochimaru still have her sword pointed at Jiraiya and told her that she could put it away since Jiraiya didn't seem like he wanted to harm any of them, yet. Jiraiya decided to take a chance and ask Naruto if he wanted to be trained by him, but to his surprise Naruto said, "No, I already have the best teachers I could ask for. They are both beautiful, strong, and caring." Jiraiya widened his eyes before he formed a smile and asked Naruto in a whisper-like tone, "So, have you slept with them yet?" Naruto was surprised by the boldness of his question and blushed because of the thoughts he was having about his 2 lovely ladies. Flashback interrupted. Saratobi widened his eyes and yelled, wait, Orochimaru and the Kyuubi are female and they both love Naruto." Jiraiya got a tick mark on his head because he got interrupted but grew a smile on his face when Saratobi asked him that question. "Oh yes, they are both in love with him, and if I do say so myself, they are both drop-dead sexy." Saratobi started getting a nosebleed and in his head were thoughts like, "You lucky bastard, Naruto," and, "If only I was younger." Jiraiya saw the nosebleed and smiled because he had the same reaction when Orochimaru told him what she would do to Naruto if he was alone with her. Saratobi decided to tell Jiraiya to continue his report, if that's what you would call that, wink wink, and Jiraiya went back to telling him what happened to Naruto. Flashback continue. Orochimaru saw Naruto's blushing face and smirked while walking over to the 2 whispering males. Kyuubi saw Orochimaru going near Naruto and Jiraiya, so she decided to go see what they are whispering about. Naruto didn't notice Orochimaru until she was whispering, "What are you blushing about?" In his ear, Jiraiya couldn't help but stare at Orochimaru bending down because it showed a good amount of her cleavage to Jiraiya. This action though didn't get unnoticed by Naruto, and Jiraiya knew he heard Naruto growl out, "Mine." Naruto noticed Kyuubi looking lonely, so he asked Orochi-chan if he could go play with Kyuubi, and Orochimaru's response was just a smile, which to Naruto meant, yes. While Naruto was running around with Kyuubi, which Orochimaru found cute because Kyuubi still loved to play around. Jiraiya noticed the happy look that Orochimaru was giving both the Nine Tails and Naruto, which caused him to smile because he never knew the real Orochimaru. Orochimaru finally stopped watching them and decided to turn around even if she really didn't want to. Okay Jiraiya, why are you here? Jiraiya was about to say the same thing he told Naruto until he was cut off by Orochimaru. Don't give me that crap about the third. Jiraiya sighed at Orochimaru's very perceptive side and answered her truthfully. I heard about Naruto being kidnapped by you and how Danzo is going to send some of his root to bring back his weapon. Orochimaru started to grit her teeth because of the idea of that disgusting man taking away her happiness. I won't let Danzo take away my love, she thought. Orochimaru then said, I didn't kidnap Naruto. He went with me on his own accord. Jiraiya smiled and nodded because of how happy Naruto looks being with them. So Orochimaru, are you going to do anything fun to Naruto? She smiled at his question and whispered something into his ear which sent him flying with a bloody nose, and that action caused a giggling Kyuubi since she used her chakra to enhance her fox ears even more to hear what Orochimaru whispered to the old pervert. Later Jiraiya decided it was time for him to leave, but he was a bit disappointed that Naruto didn't want to learn the Rasengan. Naruto saw Jiraiya's sad expression and told him that he already knew the Rasengan since Orochi-chan taught him the steps and he completed it, which surprised Jiraiya. As Jiraiya was leaving, he couldn't be more proud of his sensei's son and couldn't be more happy that Naruto is happy with the life that he is living now, but in the back of his mind Jiraiya was cursing him for being such a lucky guy for scoring not just one but two hot ladies. Flashback end. Sarutobi was happy because he knew that Naruto is happy and doing good. Jiraiya saw Sarutobi smile and knew that he wasn't going to force Naruto to come back. Sarutobi then asked a serious question, is Orochimaru by any chance the Otogakure of the hidden sound? Jiraiya nodded and Sarutobi sighed and then asked Jiraiya to do something for him. Can you send this letter to her? Jiraiya was nodded again and was happy to go because he gets to see his godson again. Hidden Sound Village. Orochimaru was in the Otokage's office doing paperwork, which is the dread of all the cages out there, when all of a sudden she heard a knock on the door. Enter, said Orochimaru. Adol, one of the people that actually supported Orochimaru taking office, came in through the cage's door. Orochimaru looked at Adol and told him to sit down, which he happily did. Now what can I do for you? Adol was actually surprised by the kindness of Orochimaru because even though he supported him, remember Orochimaru still has to hide her true gender. He thought that an S-class criminal in the bingo book would be more terrifying. Adol decided to speak to Orochimaru about the Jonin exams. Otokage-sama, the Hokage of the Hidden Leaf accepted your proposal of allowing entry into the exams, but only on one condition. Orochimaru sighed and asked, what condition? Then she gestured for the Jonin to continue, which he happily did. Well, he said, only if he can meet both you and Naruto. Orochimaru nodded and let the Jonin go do whatever that he was doing. While thinking, she went back to doing the nightmarish paperwork and daydreaming about Naruto. I wonder what he is doing right now. She thought. Orochimaru's hideout. Kyuubi saw Naruto practicing some of her fox techniques like Fire Style, Flaming Fox Bomb, and Fire Style, Fox Fire Devastation. She decided it was time to talk to him about being her mate because she didn't want to be alone anymore. Naruto saw Kyuubi walk up to him, gesturing him to sit down, which he did so he could listen to what she wanted to say. Naruto, you love me, right? Kyuubi said, which got a confused look from Naruto since he never thought that she would ask that question, since he always told her that he really cared for her. Yes, of course, Q-chan, why wouldn't I? I love both you and Maru-chan with everything I got. That got her to brighten up, and then she went to ask him the next question. How do you feel about becoming my mate? Naruto smiled and answered, I would love to become your mate, my fox Heim. Kyuubi smiled and then told him the steps they had to do, which Naruto listened and nodded to the whole time. So I have to bite your neck at the same time you bite mine, and by doing that our chakras can combine. Kyuubi then added another thing that he needed to know. Oh, I almost forgot. You will become a Hanyo, which will allow you to have half demon and half human blood in you. Even though she told him that, she was scared that he might reject the idea of becoming her mate after hearing all that. But all her worries were gone when he said, I'm ready anytime you are, my dear. She was so happy that she right away brought him into a hug, which Naruto accepted full force, and then they proceeded to do the mating ritual. Naruto bit down on her neck while she bit down on his, and they both put their chakra in each other's systems. After they were done, a seal appeared on Naruto's shoulder showing a reddish nine-tailed fox, and the same happened to the Kyuubi. She was about to stand back up until Naruto grabbed her hand and pulled her into his lap, which she snuggled into his strong warm chest. Kyuubi was enjoying the feeling of being with her mate, but she needed to tell him the other prospects about the seal. Oh Naruto, you should know that if you wanted to make Orochimaru your mate, all you need to do is bite down on her neck and the seal will appear on her as well. Naruto nodded and then decided to ask her about her name. Kyuubi, I was wondering what your real name is, since I know Kyuubi isn't really a name but mostly just a title. Kyuubi smiled and answered, well, before I didn't really give you my name because I didn't really know if I could trust you yet. This caused Naruto look a bit sad, which she noticed and decided to continue before he got too depressed. But, after all those times of caring for me and loving me, I started to believe I could trust you, and since now that we are mated, I can trust my husband with my name. There was a pause and Naruto was dying from anticipation, and then Kyuubi was delighted to finally tell him, my name is Natsuki. Naruto smiled and told her that her beautiful name matches her perfect beauty, which got her to blush and call Naruto a charmer. Orochimaru arrived at the hideout only to see Naruto and Kyuubi making out on a couch. Orochimaru started to get jealous because while she was doing the crappy paperwork, Kyuubi got to stay here with Naruto and kiss him. Naruto sensed someone nearby and stopped making out with Natsuki momentarily to find Orochimaru staring at them with a blush on her face. Naruto got up and walked up to Orochimaru, remembering Natsuki's words about being okay with him marking Maru-chan. Orochimaru saw Naruto look at her with a look of wanting, and she decided to comply by dispelling her transformation jutsu. Still as beautiful as ever, my snake Hime, said Naruto. She smiled at the compliment that he gave her, and before she said something, Naruto smashed his lips with hers, causing her to moan a little because of the love and passion he put into it. After he parted his lips from hers, he started to kiss her neck, and then all of a sudden he bit her neck, causing Orochimaru to wince a bit from the pain, but instead of pushing him away, she just hugged his head, telling him that she was okay with whatever he was doing. Naruto finally stopped biting her and put his head up to look her in the eyes. Now you're mine, Maru-chan, said Naruto, which got a confused look from Orochimaru. She then looked at her neck because of the burning sensation coming from it, and right away noticed a reddish fox with 9 tails on her neck. She was going to ask about it, but Naruto beat her to it. It's a mating mark just like the one Natsuki has on her neck and the one I have on mine. Orochimaru was so happy to hear that because the next thing she did surprised Naruto. She grabbed him and put him into a deep and passionate lip lock, causing Naruto to blush up a storm since she decided to pretty much rape his mouth with her tongue. Orochimaru then told him that she is going to be training him for the next month until the Jonin exams start, and Naruto was happy to hear that, since being trained by an S-class ninja will guarantee his chances of becoming Jonin. So for the next month all his time went to being trained by Orochimaru, and when she didn't have the time because of her cage duties, Natsuki trained him instead. Okay, I hope you all enjoyed chapter 3 because I enjoyed writing it for all of you. I will try to make chapter 4 as soon as possible because you all deserve the next chapter, since you all being amazing readers. Thank you and good night. Fanfiction.net. Just in. It was 2 weeks before the Jonin exams in the Hidden Leaf Village were going to start, and Naruto was training with his 2 Himes who he made his mates since he loved them both very much. As he was training, both Tayuya and Kin came into the training room where Orochimaru, male form, and Nitsuki were teaching some of the fighting techniques and jutsus. Naruto turned around and saw both Tayuya and Kin watching him train, so he decided to ask Orochimaru for a break so he could see what they wanted. Orochimaru nodded her head and told him, 10 minutes then back to training. Naruto nodded and went to talk to Kin and Tayuya. Kin and Tayuya saw Naruto approaching them. Hey Kin, Tayuya, why are you two doing down here? Asked Naruto. Tayuya looked at Kin and saw that she was nervous, so she decided to speak up for her. Hey Naruto, do you mind if we be your partners for the Jonin exams? Kin was supposed to ask you, but she was scared that you would reject us if she asked. Naruto smiled and answered, I would be happy to have two of my best friends join me in the Jonin exams. Kin was very happy to hear that, so she ran up to Naruto and gave him a hug, which Naruto gave back full-heartedly. Naruto always liked Kin because she was a sweet girl and he considered her to be like his sister. He also found Tayuya to be a strong-willed girl that always stands up for Kin, and that's what he loves about her. To him they are both like family and he would be happy to call them family. Even though Naruto didn't love them in a romantical way, to Orochimaru it looked otherwise, and she couldn't help but grit her teeth a little because she wouldn't admit it, but she was jealous of King's closeness to Naruto at the moment. Nitsuki was having the same thoughts going through her head, but she hid it better than Orochimaru. 10 minutes passed and Orochimaru couldn't take him spending so much time with her two subordinates. She was extremely possessive of Naruto, and the only other person besides her that she would allow Naruto spend time with is Nitsuki. Naruto, it's time to get back into training. Naruto nodded and said his goodbyes to both Kin and Tayuya as they left. Nitsuki decided to try something different with Naruto. Naruto, I want you and Orochimaru-chan to spar, but this time attack like you mean to kill. Naruto was going to argue, but the look from both Orochimaru and Nitsuki made him shut up right away. Naruto stood 10 feet away from his sensei and mate. He looked at Nitsuki because she was going to give them a signal on when to start. As Nitsuki put her hand down, Naruto had no idea what hit him because all he realized was that he was inside a wall with a hurt stomach and a giggling Orochimaru in her female form. Orochimaru saw Naruto stare at her all surprised, which made her giggle again. Naruto was about to ask her how she did that, but Orochimaru beat him to it. Remember Naruto, I seal some of my strength when I'm in my male form. Naruto smiled and got back up because he knew this was going to be a fun fight. As Naruto got up, Orochimaru got in her stance ready for any attack that he would try to dish out on her, but instead she saw him just start walking towards her, which got her wondering what he was going to do. Orochimaru was about to attack until a bunch of snakes wrapped around her body and started to constrict her. She saw the Naruto in front of her just vanish into smoke and concluded that it was a shadow clone. When did he have the time to make one of those, she thought. Naruto learned how to do a Rasengan with one hand after a lot of practice and charged it up while his snakes were constricting Orochimaru. Orochimaru smiled at Naruto's attempt because she knew from the start that he might dish out a strong technique, so she made a precaution. Naruto finished charging up his Rasengan and used his new speed to appear right behind Orochimaru with a charged up Rasengan, and he slammed it into her back. Naruto was hoping he didn't hurt her too much, but that train of thought didn't last long because he felt a stabbing pain on the side of his back. Naruto turned around only to find Orochimaru's kusanagi stabbed into his side. Naruto tried not to pay too much attention to the wound because he saw Orochimaru appear from the ground and right away she threw a right punch. Naruto tried to block it, but the pain on his right side was too much, so his guard loosened and she sent him flying into the wall again, but this time it wasn't a clone. Naruto started getting excited from the fighting and Orochimaru felt the spike in chakra, so she got even more prepared since now he might be using the Nine Tails chakra. Before Orochimaru could register what happened, she ended up smashed face first into the ground, and what made it worse was what she heard next. Flaming Fox Wave. Orochimaru widened her eyes and used a earth clone to switch places before she got hit by that attack. Naruto watched with slight cautiousness and waited for an attack. As he waited, he noticed that no attack was coming and concluded that he must have knocked Orochimaru out, but once he put his guard down, Orochimaru took that chance to attack and all Naruto heard was, "Wind style. Great breakthrough." All Naruto could do was widen his eyes at the huge amount of wind coming his way. As the wind made its way towards him, Naruto smiled and used his Nine Tails chakra, which caused his eyes to change blood red with black slit pupils, and then said, "Wind style. Great breakthrough." Naruto knew that he could not win against Orochimaru without relying on some of his mate's chakra. As both of their jutsus made contact, it made a giant wind explosion. But Naruto didn't wait for Orochimaru to attack him. And he rushed inside the destruction to catch Orochimaru off guard, but it seemed that Orochimaru had the same idea because they both met halfway and Naruto was caught off guard, which Orochimaru took full advantage of and used her multiple hidden shadow snake hands to constrict Naruto, and before he could escape she used her 5-element seal on Naruto, which caused all the Nine Tails chakra to recede right back into his body, and the sudden power drainage caused Naruto to be knocked out. Naruto woke up about 2 hours after being knocked out. He looked around and found himself inside the medical room, and he tried to move but found himself unable to because Natsuki was draped around him with her beautiful fluffy tails and ears out. Naruto laughed a little, but that laughing stopped right away with a blush because she moved right on top of him and he right away noticed she was naked and her perky breasts were right on his shirtless chest, which didn't help with his blush because it only intensified until he got a bloody nose. Naruto tried to get out of her grasp but found it impossible because she wrapped her tails around his body, which constricted his movement. Naruto was stuck and the tails weren't helping him because all they caused was him to become drowsy. Before Naruto went back to sleep, he leaned into Natsuki's face and planted a nice kiss on her forehead. Natsuki awoke to a nice feeling and found Naruto hugging her, which made her even happier, and she decided to go back to sleep. Orochimaru came into the medical room only to find a naked Natsuki and a peaceful-looking Naruto. The sight of Naruto sleeping made Orochimaru happy, but the sight of Natsuki sleeping with Naruto made her kind of jealous. Orochimaru decided to lock the room door and she then transformed into her female form and got undressed while crawling into the bed that Naruto and Natsuki were sleeping in at the moment. 2 weeks later. The days gone by relatively normal. All they did was train, and after they thought Naruto trained enough, they then trained both Kin and Tayuya so they could both be helpful to Naruto in becoming a Jonin. Orochimaru put on the Otokage outfit and made her way towards the Hidden Leaf with her bodyguards and Naruto's group. As Orochimaru made her way towards Hidden Leaf Village with her personal bodyguard, who was Natsuki, or also known as the Kitsune Anbu, and Naruto by her side as well as his teammates. Natsuki stopped suddenly, which got Orochimaru on high alert and Naruto on guard, as well as the other 5 sound ninja that were traveling with them. Natsuki yelled all of a sudden, "Get down!" As everyone did that, a bunch of shuriken and kunai were seen flying overhead. When everyone got back up, Orochimaru noticed she lost 3 out of the 5 ninja that volunteered to travel with her. Before Orochimaru met Naruto, she wouldn't have cared, but Naruto's caring personality warmed her dark heart, and now she was angry at her men being killed right before her eyes. Right when Orochimaru was about to tell the hidden ninja to show themselves, 10 ninjas with Anbu masks appeared and spoke. "Naruto Uzumaki, you will be coming with us. Our master has ordered us to take you in, and if you resist we will use force." Naruto wasn't happy to hear that. But what really set him off was what they said next. "Orochimaru, our master requested us to bring you back because he found out your secret. So do you mind dropping the henge before we take you to Danzo-sama and have you breed powerful children for us?" Orochimaru sighed and dropped her henge to show a beautiful woman with black hair and yellow eyes with black slit pupils. One of the rude Anbu decided to speak up. "Very good, now if you would go." He didn't get to finish because Naruto killed him. The other 9 root Anbu turned around only to see Naruto in his first-tailed form. They froze because the amount of killing intent and bloodlust in the air made them want to get away from the source even if Danzo trained them to be fearless and emotionless. Naruto turned around with his glare which caused the root Anbu to step back subconsciously since they saw were the blood-red eyes with black slits. When they were prepared to attack Naruto they hesitated because Naruto started to speak in a demonic voice. How dare you threaten my mate? How dare you threaten her in front of me? Don't expect mercy because I will assure you now that none of you are leaving here alive. As Naruto said that he let out a monstrous roar which shook the ground because of the intense red chakra that was surrounding Naruto. Both Orochimaru and Natsuki were watching and they both had different reactions to what Naruto said. Natsuki was heating up all over and staring at Naruto with lust in her eyes, but she was also jealous because it wasn't her that he was getting angry for. It was Orochimaru and she knew that if she was in the same position as Orochimaru, Naruto would act same way but she still couldn't help but be jealous of Orochimaru at the moment. Orochimaru on the other hand had a wide smile on her voice and her eyes also showed lust towards Naruto. Damn it Naruto. If you keep this up I won't stop myself from loving you even more if that even possible, she thought. She was also thinking of different ways to give him a thank you present that she was sure he would enjoy. As the root Anbu waited for Naruto to make a move they didn't expect Jiraiya of the 3 Sannin arriving. Jiraiya looked at the scene before him and noticed that the Anbu that were attacking Orochimaru's group were root and he right away guessed what happened. Before one of the root Anbu could speak up, Jiraiya appeared right next to one of the Anbu and shoved a Rasengan right into the root Anbu's stomach causing that Anbu to be sent flying. Jiraiya then spoke up. You are in violation of Hokage's orders and I have permission to get rid of any unwanted pests that are trying to stop the Otokage. The Anbu didn't give any response all they did was they split up and 4 of them attacked Naruto and the other 4 attacked Jiraiya. Orochimaru was going to step in but decided to let Naruto handle it since she wanted to watch her knight in shining armor protect her. Naruto was still in his first tail form. As the 4 root Anbu attacked him he smirked which looked extremely demonic and the next thing he said caught the Anbu off guard because they expected him to be out of control in the fox form. Fox fire devastation. 2 of the root Anbu then did the respected hand signs, fire style, fireball jutsu, while the other 2 split up to Naruto's left and right hoping to do a pincer attack on him. The plan they made didn't go like they wanted because Fox Fire Devastation was more powerful than the 2 fireballs which caused the 2 root Anbu that challenged him to be blown away. They weren't killed but they sure were injured. As the 2 root Anbu were about to attack Naruto, they were surprised again when Naruto roared again but this time a second tail formed and his chakra started to whiplash even more and his bloodlust increased as well causing the 2 root Anbu to stop momentarily which gave Naruto a perfect amount of time to kill them. The root Anbu on the left didn't even have enough time to react to the danger in front of him because the moment he saw Naruto with his 2-tailed form in front of him his arms were already on the ground and the blood was gushing out of his 2 stumps. Naruto then turned around but got hit by a fireball. The root Anbu thought he killed him but what he saw next scared even the emotionless killing machine. Naruto was just standing there like the fireball never even hit him in the first place. Naruto turned around and his gaze alone made the root Anbu freeze on the spot. The root Anbu tried to move but realized his body had other plans. Naruto smiled seeing the root Anbu being affected by his bloodlust. Naruto then held his hand out and the root Anbu noticed a ball of demonic-looking chakra compressing into his hand. Naruto smirked and vanished out of sight and arrived right in front of the root Anbu jamming his 2-tailed Rasengan right into the Anbu's stomach causing a lot of blood to flow everywhere because the Rasengan literally was slashing the Anbu apart. Jiraiya defeated his enemies with ease not like Naruto but close to it and saw Orochimaru approach the 2-tailed Naruto and he was about to jump in and stop Naruto from killing her but instead he saw something that surprised him. Sorry forget to tell that Naruto will be slightly off but he can still be defeated. I hope you liked it because I had a hard time writing since I had to reread everything to remember what I was writing about. So if you review, please don't hate because a hater will get more hate from the writer, and I write for both the readers and myself to avoid a headache, so yay, good night. Orochimaru saw Naruto kill those rude Anbu for her, and it made her happy because it showed her how much he cared for her safety. She walked up to the two-tailed Naruto who was looking at her the whole time, and she embraced him. Now usually the Kyuubi's demonic chakra would burn anyone, but since Orochimaru was his mate, she was not affected by the demonic chakra, and instead she felt extremely safe and warm when Naruto hugged her back. Jiraiya, for all he knew, was surprised beyond anything. He expected Naruto to lash out towards Orochimaru because of the uncontrollable Kyuubi chakra, but instead he looked completely fine. He decided to get some answers, and the only person or demon in his case that had the answers was the Kyuubi herself. Naruto saw Jiraiya approach Natsuki, but he didn't pay much mind to it since he trusted his godfather. At first Naruto wanted nothing to do with him, but after all the training and the attempts at forgiveness that Jiraiya kept trying to do, he decided to throw him a bone. Naruto deactivated his demon fox cloak and waited for Orochimaru to do the body count because of the apparent sneak attack that was orchestrated by Danzo. Orochimaru was looking over the apparent loss of life and frowned. She lost 3 Jonin and 2 Chunin shinobi kunoichi, and she only has 2 Jonin left, not including her fox Anbu Natsuki, and her Chunin Naruto and his 2 teammates Kin and Tayuya. Orochimaru sighed and decided to keep going because she did promise Hiruzen Sarutobi that she and Naruto would greet the old man. Orochimaru put her genjutsu back on because she still didn't want to expose her true gender until it was a good time, or until she felt completely safe from Danzo's conniving. Everyone checked up on each other. They decided to keep going to the Chunin exams. Jiraiya stuck around for mostly 2 reasons. One reason was that he wanted to keep his godchild safe, even though said godchild was trained by a Sannin and by the Kyuubi. The second reason, which is more perverted, was that the Kyuubi, also known as Natsuki, is extremely hot, and he wanted to use the romance between Naruto, Natsuki and Orochimaru to write his next book. Jiraiya tried to introduce Naruto to the magical world of Icha Paradise. Let's just say his mates were far from happy seeing such perverted material near their Naruto-kun. Everyone got into formation. Orochimaru was in the middle while Natsuki was next to her, and Naruto was with Jiraiya up front while Kin and Tayuya were in the back with the other shinobi kunoichi. The trip took a good 2 days, but they finally arrived at Konoha. Naruto frowned when they got to the front entrance because this place didn't give him many fond memories. Both Orochimaru and Natsuki saw this and frowned too because they don't like seeing their lover sad. The 2 Chunin gate guards saw Orochimaru and right away went into their combat stances, but that was stopped once Jiraiya told them that Orochimaru had special permission from the Hokage to be here, so they reluctantly dropped their stances and went back to dreading their job. Naruto snorted seeing the 2 Chunin being lazy when they should be doing their job, because by the looks of it anyone could sneak in without much difficulty. Orochimaru decided to voice her opinion to Jiraiya while Natsuki stayed quiet. Jiraiya, I have noticed that this village has been becoming very lax in both shinobi kunoichi quality as well as security. Jiraiya looked down because he didn't have anything to say since he knew that was all correct. He tried to voice those opinions before to Sarutobi, but the council always shut all those ideas down. Jiraiya was ashamed to admit, but Konoha was just a shadow of its former strength because the civilian council pretty much controlled all shinobi kunoichi matters. Some of the civilians were looking at Naruto trying to figure out who that was, while others were noticing the fox Anbu next to Otokage. To them it was weird seeing an Anbu with 2 fox-like ears above the head as well as 9 tails. One of the civilians came to the conclusion that is the Kyuubi and yelled it out. This became a mass hysteria of people yelling things like, "It's the demon," and "It's come to destroy us like all those years ago," or the more popular one, "Kill the demon." Naruto had enough of this and yelled in a demonified voice, The next person to call my mate in. It will suffer the consequences. The other civilians finally recognized who that was and started yelling, the demon child. Or, kill the demon child. That didn't go very well with Natsuki because next thing everyone knew they could barely stand with the ki that was radiating off of Natsuki. Do you humans want me to destroy your village? Because if you do, you're doing a very good job of making me angry. How dare you scum call my Naruto a demon? He is the most kind-hearted person that I know, even though he went through the crap that this village caused to him. One of the villagers yelled out, the demon is probably weak, and who would care if we got rid of the demon child? Natsuki was about to retort until Orochimaru stopped her. Look here, you scum. Naruto is protected by all of Otogakure, and I will not allow one of my shinobi being harmed because you scum can't get rid of your unjustified hate. The villagers were taken back by Orochimaru's statement because they thought that the Otokage would just hand over the demon brat, but instead they are protecting it. Some of the villagers started moving away while the majority still had their weapons up, hoping to scare them to the point of handing over the demon brat so they could finish what the fourth started. The villagers were about to attack until some Anbu arrived at the location that this was going on at. By the order of the Hokage, you are demanded to disperse this crowd. Failure to do so will get you thrown into ti or execution, one of the Anbu said to the crowd of villagers. The crowd soon dispersed because none of them wanted to get executed or tortured. Naruto watched as a purple-haired Anbu walked up to Orochimaru, and he could tell even without the Anbu having to remove her mask that the Neko Anbu was scowling at Orochimaru. Neko went up to Orochimaru and had to hold herself back from grabbing her sword and attacking Orochimaru right on the spot because of what he did to poor Anko. Neko treated Anko like a sister, and seeing the person that caused her so much pain right in front of her and not allowed to kill him just doesn't sit right with her. While Neko was leading the group to the Hokage building, Naruto noticed Orochimaru's sadness from the mating mark. Naruto walked up to Orochimaru and smiled to her, which made her day because she was still feeling sad from how she left Anko to the scum of this village. When they finally arrived at the Hokage building, Orochimaru turned around and told Yuya and Kin to go and find a place to stay at while they take care of business. Both girls nodded with the two Jonin sound guards that were with them and went to find a place to stay. Orochimaru then motioned Naruto to follow her so they could talk to the Hokage. Orochimaru and Naruto made their way to the Hokage's office but were stopped because of the lady at the front desk. The lady saw Naruto and right away scowled. What are you doing in here, demon? The moment that woman said that, she forfeited her life because that's what Orochimaru thought. Orochimaru right away lifted the woman by the neck and was going to choke her to death, but the Hokage walking out of his office to check to see if Naruto and Orochimaru have arrived ruined her plan. The Hokage saw Orochimaru holding his receptionist by her neck and right away assumed that she made Orochimaru mad somehow. Hiruzen Sarutobi sighed and asked Orochimaru nicely to put down his receptionist, but the moment she did that, the Hokage regretted it because his receptionist decided to attack Naruto, thinking that everyone will snap out of the demon child's mind control. Orochimaru saw the aggression towards her Naruto and right away summoned one of her poisonous snakes to bite the woman on the neck. The lady got a look of horror on her face once she realized that a snake bit her, and one look at Orochimaru's face told her that snake was poisonous. She turned around and tried to beg for the antidote from the Hokage, but all she saw was disappointment, and right when she was about to ask Orochimaru the same question, the poison killed her and she fell face first onto the floor. Hiruzen then told Naruto and Orochimaru to meet him inside his office while motioning the Anbu to take care of the body. When they both got inside the Hokage's office, Orochimaru asked the Hokage to put privacy seals up. Sarutobi sighed and motioned his Anbu to leave the office and put up some privacy seals so they could talk in private. The Hokage was about to stop talking until a flaming shunshin appeared in the middle of his office, which alerted him, but one look from both Naruto and Orochimaru told him not to worry. The Hokage watched and saw a woman with a fox mask appear out of the flames and assumed right away that was the Kyuubi, which was pretty obvious with her fox ears and 9 beautiful tails swishing around in the open. Natsuki right away saw Naruto and jump into his arms to hug the living life out of him, which was pretty funny for the Hokage to watch. Sarutobi decided to interrupt the moment for more pressing issues. It's nice to see you happy, Naruto, but I wanted to have a talk to you and Orochimaru. Naruto nodded, but decided to ask, do you mind if Natsuki stays here? Sarutobi smiled and answered, not at all, Naruto. I don't want to kick out someone you love. Naruto smiled happily, which also made Orochimaru and Natsuki smile. Somewhere else. Tayuya and Kin were walking around since they had time to kill after finding a place to stay at, and they decided to check out the ramen place that Naruto always bragged about. As they walked, they discussed the upcoming Jonin exams. They were rudely interrupted by a loud screeching noise. What are you sound sluts doing here? Tayuya and Kin saw the pink-haired thing and right away remembered her from how Naruto described her. Flashback 1 year ago. Naruto and Natsuki finished sparring and Naruto had free time, so he decided to go see what Tayuya and Kin were up to since they were going to be a team. Kin saw Naruto enter the room and she put her book about genjutsu down to see what he wanted. Tayuya watched as Naruto sat down in a chair and asked, do you need something, shithead? Naruto just smiled at her colorful language and answered, yes, I wanted to tell you too why I left Konohagakure. After about 30 minutes, Tayuya had her mouth open but couldn't say anything to the cruel treatment that the village gave to Naruto. Kin on the other hand couldn't stop crying because here was the person who saved her and she found out that his life was a living hell. Naruto also decided to tell them about his friends, since they might encounter them when they go to Konohagakure. Naruto explained how his friends were like from Sakura being a complete and useless fangirl for the last Uchiha, to the arrogance of Sasuke Uchiha and how he always gets what he wants but still wants more. Naruto also told them that he had the pleasure of meeting Kakashi Hatake when he was out getting ramen, and let's just say after meeting him he wished he never did because he told Naruto, you should be honored to talk to Sasuke since you're just a clanless nobody, your future as a shinobi is very small compared to Sasuke. After he said that, he told Naruto to have a good day and left him sad and angry. After Naruto was done telling them his past, Kin got up and hugged him, which didn't really surprise him. I made Kin nice because I like her better like that. Doesn't mean she isn't sadistic when it comes to enemies, but what really surprised Naruto was when Tayuya hugged him with some tears escaping her eyes. Don't worry, shithead, we will be your friends and family if you let us. Naruto held in his breath because he never thought he would hear those words from anyone. Tears escaped from Naruto's eyes and he hugged them both, hoping to never lose them no matter what. Flashback ended. Tayuya and Kin decided to ignore Sakura in hopes of her going away, but that went out the door because Sakura decided to follow them. They tried to ignore her, but she was screeching about how sexy Sasuke is and how they were here to just steal him away, which made both Tayuya and Kin want to puke. Sasuke saw Sakura talking to some sound kunoichi and decided to introduce himself since he is the last Uchiha and everyone should know and worship him. Sasuke went up to both Tayuya and Kin with a grin which creeped them out. Sasuke stood in front of them, which made them want to back up, but the pink-haired banshee was behind them. Sasuke then started talking about how he was the last Uchiha and they should be honored to speak to him, which made Tayuya angry every second until she exploded. Will you shut the fuck up and take your pet banshee with you so we could go and never see you two again? The banshee was about to start screeching until Sasuke slapped Tayuya across the face, leaving her momentarily stunned. How dare you sound slut talk to the last Uchiha like that? You should be happy that I consider talking to you, so I will give you a chance for forgiveness. Sasuke then crossed his arms and continued, I want you bitches to get on your knees and beg to be my personal sluts until I have no use for you. I think it's better than being in a worthless village that has no Uchiha. He ended that with a smug grin which only went away once he found himself crashing through a wall. Naruto stood where Sasuke was standing before, pissed beyond hell, with his demonic red eyes with black slits and fangs, looking where he sent Sasuke flying. Naruto was just livid. He couldn't believe that Trash had the nerve to hit to Yuya, who he considered not just a friend but a sister. Sasuke, if I ever see you touch my family or anyone in my village ever again, I will rip every body part and watch you bleed out, with a satisfied grin. Naruto then motioned to Yuya and Kin to follow him, which they did. He decided to say one more thing. Still in his initial Kyuubi state, "You're weak and you'll never beat Itachi. Worthless Uchiha. I promise you, if I see you anywhere near Itachi, I will kill you and make sure you suffer." And with that, Naruto and his group left right when Kakashi and Naruto and Orochimaru were standing in front of the Hokage, while Natsuki decided to take a seat in one of the chairs to the side. Sarutobi then got up from his seat and walked in front of Naruto. Nothing was happening until Sarutobi brought Naruto into a hug. "I missed you, my boy. It felt lonely without the bright sunshine that you brought everywhere." Naruto smiled and some tears escaped his eyes. "I missed you too, Ojiizan." Orochimaru was happy to hear that Naruto still had people to care for him in this hellhole, but even if the Hokage asks Naruto to come back, she will never let him go. Orochimaru saw the Hokage finally let go of Naruto and looked at her. He asked Orochimaru to drop the genjutsu, which she happily did because that would mean she can hug Naruto all she wanted without him feeling weird. Once Orochimaru dropped the genjutsu, Sarutobi had to pick up his jaw from the ground because he was looking at an extremely attractive woman. He noticed that her golden yellow eyes with black slits now have a look of mischievousness and playfulness instead of the usual hatred and seriousness that her male form shows. The Hokage couldn't help but get a nosebleed from seeing her smile. Orochimaru saw that and smiled. Orochimaru decided to play around a bit, so she said, "Sorry Hokage-sama, you can look but can't touch. Only my Naruto gets the pleasure of doing that." After she finished saying that, she went behind Naruto and hugged him from behind, smothering his broad back with her chest intentionally to get Naruto riled up. Sarutobi only had one thing to say to the display in front of him. "Naruto, you lucky bastard." Naruto only smiled and answered, "Yes, that I am." Flashback end. Naruto then told to Yuya that they just talked about how his life was going and how happy he was being in Otogakure. Yuya and Kin were both happy to hear that the Hokage considered Naruto like his grandchild and were happy to hear how much he cared for Naruto's well-being. Yuya decided to ask about Orochimaru and where he was. "Naruto, what happened to Orochimaru?" Naruto didn't tell them that Orochimaru was female in the flashback. Naruto answered, "I don't know. The Hokage decided to talk to him and the Hokage told me I can go since he wanted to speak to Orochimaru in private." Both Yuya and Kin nodded, and Kin saw Yuya wanted to say something and she had a suspicion on what it was, but she probably felt out of character if she said something mushy. Kin sighed and grabbed Naruto's hand. "Don't worry Naruto. We in Otogakure are your new home and we will never let someone hurt you again." Naruto smiled and just squeezed her hand while Yuya had a smile on her face. It took a couple of minutes, but they finally arrived at Ichiraku's ramen, which Naruto could smell thanks to his extra sensitive sense of smell after becoming the second Kyuubi. The smell to Naruto alone was agonizing because he hasn't had this since he left Konoha. Both Yuya and Kin saw his happy drooling face and both couldn't keep themselves from laughing, which caused Naruto to blush in embarrassment and wipe the drool away while at the same time leading them inside to get some ramen. Hokage's office. Orochimaru decided to take a seat after Naruto left to discuss some issues with the Hokage. She looked around just to double-check if there are any root anbu still hidden. After her little inspection, the Hokage decided to ask Orochimaru a question. "Orochimaru, I'm happy that you have found happiness and I hope Naruto returns to Konoha. Sarutobi was about to continue, but the hissing of Orochimaru's snakes and her angry glare stopped the discussion from continuing, but I see that Naruto is happy and leave it as that. Orochimaru, how are you doing? Sarutobi felt weird asking that question since he is the one that basically kicked her out of Konoha after getting a report from Danzo. Orochimaru smiled at that question and answered, well, Hokage-sama. The Hokage noticed the obvious venom in the way she said, Hokage-sama. She continued, it's funny that you would ask that since 2 years ago I was planning to destroy Konoha and kidnap Sasuke Uchiha and get his Sharingan. She sighed and decided to continue before the old man asked questions, but like all things, some have to fail and Naruto came into the picture right when my hate for this village was hitting its limits. At first I thought of using his circumstances to my advantage since he never got any love from anyone and I thought I could manipulate him easily. She saw Sarutobi have a frown on his face and some killing intent was seeping out of him. Orochimaru ignored it and continued, it's funny at first I just faked all the kindness I sent his way and I could tell that he knew it from the beginning but never said anything about it because he was for some reason happy just being with me. I started to develop strong feeling for him which I never understood. I tried to hide the feelings and work on my projects. I remember one time he asked me what I was working on and I answered him honestly and it was the biggest mistake because I felt my heart pretty much shatter that day. The Hokage was surprised to hear that Orochimaru felt bad but decided to ask, what did you say to Naruto? She gave a sad smile and explained it to him. Flashback. Naruto wanted to go and find Orochimaru to see if he could help her with anything. He still wanted to know why Orochimaru has been so distant lately and Naruto would have asked but he was too scared that she might become angry and start hating her like all the people in Konoha. Naruto found Orochimaru in her lab which she usually told him to stay out of since she didn't trust him enough to let him know her secrets besides her actual gender. Naruto decided not to beat around the bush and ask Orochimaru straight up if he could help with anything. Orochimaru-sama, do you need any help? She turned around and saw Naruto standing nervously. She sighed and then got a great idea since she needed someone to test out her poisons and who better than a Jinchuriki. Naruto saw her walk up to him with a needle with a green-looking liquid inside the tube. He wanted to ask her what that is but knew she wouldn't give him an answer. Orochimaru saw the hurt on his face but didn't really care much for it. How about I release my genjutsu, to show you that I only trust you with my secret and you let me see how effective this experimental poison is. Naruto hesitated which he knew was a bad idea because the next thing that Orochimaru said really hurt him. If you're just going to stand there and not give me an answer, then I don't need you. Your only use was to get experimented on and you're even too useless for that. The last part she whispered but with Naruto's sensitive hearing he caught what she said and it only made his heart crack even more. He just nodded and walked away while whispering, I'm sorry for being useless, and just like that he went out the door. Flashback interrupted. Sarutobi to say the least was furious. You do know that you made Naruto feel useless, which I can tell is the one thing he never wanted to be to you. Orochimaru looked down in shame but still had to tell him about the time she actually broke the love that Naruto had for her. Look, I know I am not even worth being in Naruto's radiant presence. I still can't believe to this day that he forgave me and chose to still love me even though I only monopolized on his emotions at the beginning. She sighed and decided to tell the Hokage the worst part of probably Naruto's life. Flashback continue. 1 month time skip. Orochimaru was standing next to Kabuto with Naruto sitting in a chair with a smile on his face but if you looked closely enough you could tell that Naruto's happy demeanor is just like glass that is waiting to shatter. Orochimaru was discussing her plans on how they were going to take down Konoha with using Naruto as leeway against the Hokage. Naruto wanted to argue that he didn't want to hurt the old man, but the relationship between Naruto and Orochimaru has been going downhill since the incident in the lab, and no, she treats him like any other random shinobi that works under her, but even with that, Naruto always convinced himself that it was better than what it actually was. Naruto started to notice the change in Orochimaru because she was either constantly talking about destroying Konoha or getting Sasuke Uchiha. Destroying Konoha was something Naruto could deal with, since if he helped, then maybe Orochimaru might start at least showing some affection or maybe just a simple hug. But when she constantly talked about getting Sasuke and the Sharingan, it just made his heart hurt each time, especially when she got the reports on his progress and then compared it to Naruto's. She always ended up saying, "Why can't you be more like Sasuke with his legendary Sharingan," which Naruto found funny the first time since his progress was better than Sasuke's. The first time he pointed that out, he ended up being punched in the face by Orochimaru, and with her saying, "You might be doing good, but this is as far as your training with me will go, since you seem to think you're something special. Well, you're not. The only reason you have any potential is because of the fox, and without it I would have probably just killed you that day or simply threw you away when you lost meaning. Be grateful that I allow you stay here." Those words hurt Naruto so much. Everyone in Konoha pretty much treated Sasuke as a god and him as trash, and Naruto thought going with Orochimaru might have changed that, but it seems it's just the same. Naruto sighed at the memory that flashed through his head, and saw Orochimaru look at him with a smile. Naruto for some reason started getting hope that maybe Orochimaru might still hold some meaning in his existence. Orochimaru told Kabuto that he may leave and motioned Naruto to come over near her. She waited for Kabuto to leave and decided to lock the door for safe measures. Naruto at the same time was slightly nervous since he didn't know what she wanted, and all he could hope for was something that would show that she still cared for him, even if it is only her telling him that he did a good job. Orochimaru sat next to Naruto on the makeshift couch and started talking about her plan. "Okay Naruto, I'm going to send you to do the Chunin exams with 2 others while I'll be disguised. I want you to find Sasuke and take him down and kidnap him. I have been training you for this moment." Naruto's hair shadowed his eyes and Orochimaru saw that he wasn't paying attention. She was going to tell him the plan again, but she got stopped by a "no" from Naruto. Orochimaru narrowed her eyes and asked, "What do you mean no, Uzumaki?" Naruto felt the sting of her not even calling him by his first name, but he decided to continue. "Why do you want Sasuke? Why does everyone want him? I want to be of use to you, Orochimaru-sama. Please, I can be his replacement. I will train even harder. I won't ask for anything else, just don't throw me away." Orochimaru sighed and said, "Naruto, I can't take over your body because you're not strong enough and you don't have the Sharingan. I need you to get Sasuke, and then someone is going to pick him up at the front gate while you hold off the Anbu." Naruto couldn't believe what he was hearing. She pretty much is telling him that after getting Sasuke that he should just get killed or even worse, tortured. Naruto just sat there in silence with a dead look in his eyes because his mind and heart couldn't take that the one person that might have cared for him is throwing him away for someone else. Naruto looked at her with his dead eyes and said, "If that's what Orochimaru-sama desires, then I will make sure not to talk when they torture me." Orochimaru looked confused and she looked into his face and right away realized her mistake. "Wait, Naruto, I didn't mean I wanted you to get captured." Naruto gave her a dead smile and said, "Well, I'm Chunin level at best, so there's no way I can handle any Anbus, and I don't have Sasuke's skill, so I guess I'm pretty useless to you." Naruto then got up and started walking to the door, and before he unlocked it to open it, he turned around and looked at her while saying, "For what it's worth, I loved you since you saved me from Konoha. And I understand that you probably find me loving you as not worthy or even repulsive since I'm a monster, but for what it's worth I thought maybe you might come to love me too." Naruto then proceeded to walk out of the room, leaving Orochimaru without her genjutsu to sit with her yellow with black slit eyes wide open and realizing the horrible things she has done to the one person that stayed by her side even when she treated him so bad. Flashback end. Sarutobi was honestly seething right now. Orochimaru, give me a reason to why I shouldn't just let Danzo have you. Orochimaru was slightly surprised by the aggressiveness of the old Hokage. I learned my lesson. It took me pretty much a whole year to just get him to show emotions again, and that still didn't stop him from guarding his emotions against me since I'm the cause of it. She took a breath and continued. I know I don't deserve someone like Naruto in my life. He is like a ray of sunshine that can bring happiness to anyone while I'm just the dark shadow that latches onto him like a leech. But I won't let anyone have him. She then looked the Hokage straight in the eyes and he had recalled from the ki and bloodlust coming from them. Her voice right away turned demonic. I won't let anyone have him. He is mine. I love him, and if you even try to take him away from me, I will make sure that everyone in this village will die while I watch them suffer. She then gave him a smile and continued, and don't worry, I learned a pretty hard lesson after Natsuki was released. The old Hokage smiled and said, please take care of Naruto and I will give you both my best wishes. Orochimaru gave him a wicked smile. Oh, don't worry, I will take care of every part of him. I won't let anyone have him, and I can't wait to corrupt that innocence. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat in his office going over what he discussed with Orochimaru and couldn't help but chuckle. Naruto can help anyone reach the light when he is involved, he quietly whispered. Sarutobi didn't have much time to linger to his thoughts since a flaming blast appeared in his office and out of it stood a woman wearing a beautiful red kimono with 9 orange tails with red tips swishing around. She also had flowing red hair which slightly reminded Sarutobi of Kushina, but then he noticed the 2 fox ears on top of her head which watched the color of her tails. Sarutobi was on guard until he realized that the person in front of him was the Kyuubi, and since Naruto trusted and loved her, he could trust her as well. The third Hokage sighed and asked, what can I help you with, miss? He just realized that Naruto never told him her name, which got him an embarrassed chuckle which didn't go unnoticed by the woman in the room. The woman smiled at the grandfather figure that Naruto had in Konoha, but then her look got serious and she answered, since my mate cares about you, I will allow you to call me Natsuki. We have some things to discuss, Sarutobi. Sarutobi sighed again because he slightly guessed what this discussion was going to be about. The Hokage then asked her if it was about Naruto's heritage and she nodded her head. Natsuki walked up to his desk and asked him, when are you going to tell him who his parents are? Sarutobi answered, I will tell him after the Junin exams. If I tell him right now he might not be able to concentrate on the exams. She scoffed at his attempt to justify his reason in not telling him. Why not just tell him now? He has a right to now since you kept it away from him all his life. Sarutobi tried to reason with her, but Iwa. Natsuki growled, I don't give a shit about Iwa. I could destroy them easily, and if I had my way I would have destroyed this place as well, but Naruto still had some precious people here and I would never hurt my mate no matter what. The Hokage was taken back by that statement because even though Naruto assured him the Kyuubi was not evil, he still had his doubts. Right when she got in his face, the Hokage saw her for a new light and not the terrible monster that they thought she was the whole time, but instead as a person that has feelings and emotions like anybody else. Sarutobi couldn't deny her claim about destroying Iwa, and with how Konoha treated Naruto, he is surprised she hasn't killed anyone yet. She decided to go back on topic. Natsuki got calm again and asked the aging Hokage for Naruto's actual birth document. The Hokage sighed, which he noticed that he has been doing a lot of, and stood up to go in front of the fourth Hokage's picture and opened a secret compartment that held Naruto's documents. Sarutobi sat down in his chair and presented the documents to Natsuki, who took them and looked over them while the Hokage just watched her do that. She then placed the documents down and looked at the Hokage with a questioning gaze and decided to ask, how are you planning to tell your citizens that Naruto is the fourth son and not have them screaming for his execution for lying? Sarutobi smiled and answered, well, the documents themselves are proof and we have the blood samples, and if that somehow doesn't help, my word is still law. Natsuki all of a sudden started laughing, which confused the old Hokage since he didn't get what was funny. After Natsuki calmed down from her laughing, she decided to tell the authoritative Hokage what was so funny. You really think your citizens and or shinobi kunoichi would listen to you about anything involving Naruto? Sarutobi slightly grimaced at the truth that was presented before him, but still tried to show that he was in control. If asking them won't work, then I will make them or execute them for treason. Natsuki tried to hold in her laugh on how the Hokage would control the situation. You really think that your laws or threats would get through your idiotic people? For every minute Natsuki spoke, her voice carried more of a demonic approach and begun to get angrier each passing second. Sarutobi frowned and answered, they have helped the boy in the past. That statement didn't seem like a good idea to say, since right when it came out of the Hokage's mouth, Natsuki slammed both her hand on his desk, breaking the desk, and startling the old Hokage. The rage in Natsuki's eyes was evident, and the swirling red chakra just added to the effect. Now you listen here, she said with her demonic voice. The trash that you call people in your village are the most disgusting humans I have seen by far. Your laws are only on paper that your council uses to wipe their own asses after torturing the poor boy. Don't give me that crap about your laws helping him. Have you forgotten that I was sealed inside Naruto and saw all the inhumane acts that our so-called villagers did? The loneliness he had to face every day and pretty much the only human contact he would have, were the beating he received. Sarutobi bristled with anger and stood up, trying to intimidate the Kyuubi. Sarutobi spoke with great anger in his voice. How dare you call the great citizens of this village trash? Sure, the acts are deplorable, but they would have changed their hearts soon. The will of Phi. He didn't get to finish because Natsuki grabbed Sarutobi by the neck and spoke with what would be rage but with a hint of sadness. Do not finish that load of bullshit that you call the will of fire. Natsuki took a breath and continued. The will of fire is a saying you use to flaunt to the other villages on how strong this oh so peaceful villages is, but under all that crap, you people are as evil and manipulative as Orochimaru was back then. Natsuki then started having tears coming out of her beautiful demonic red eyes with black slits. I regret every day what happened to Naruto-kun. I always apologize no matter how much he tells me that it's not my fault, and Sarutobi, I know you see what your village is becoming. She dropped the Hokage, who in question had a contemplative look on his face. Natsuki waited for his answer, which came in a form of a sigh, and then he stood up and started speaking. Yes, you're right, I was just a fool thinking that the people would look at Naruto as well, Naruto and not the Kyuubi. I knew the civilian council are pretty much dictating everything. I knew the elders were going behind my back making sure Sasuke Uchiha was powerful while Naruto was kept weak. I just wanted them to realize their own follies. Sarutobi took a breath while having tears coming out of his eyes and then continued. I never wanted Naruto to suffer. He is like a grandson to me. I tried helping him, but each time I was undermined and overruled. Sarutobi got a new look of determination. Well, not anymore. This is a dictatorship and I am the Hokage. My word is law and anybody that disobeyed it now will be executed. Natsuki smiled at his new determination and they both decided to crack open a sake bottle to the new Sarutobi Hiruzen, or the return of the god of shinobi. Ichiraku's ramen. Naruto, Kin and Tayuya arrived to Ichiraku's ramen and both Kin and Tayuya could see the smile on Naruto's face. Naruto started having tears coming out of his eyes. Tuki Jiji, Ayame ni-chan. Naruto waited for a minute, until he heard shouting, if this is another joke about Naruto leaving, I will report you to the Hokage and ban you from my shop. Right when Tuki said that, he came out and froze when he saw Naruto right in front of him. Ayame walked out. What's the matter, Otosan? But then she saw where he was looking and got angry. How dare you disguise yourself as Naruto, you sick bastards. Naruto shook his head and pointed at his headband. I'm part of Oto now, Ayame Nichan. Ayame started having tears coming out of her eyes and ran up to Naruto and hugged him. I missed you, Ototo. Tuki was next up right after his daughter and hugged Naruto. Both Tayuya and Kin saw how loved he was by the Ichiraku duo. The love-in reunion would have kept going if it weren't for some Anbu arriving. Uzumaki-san, Hokage and the council asked for your summons. Naruto sighed. He knew why the civilian council wanted him for hurting their precious Uchiha, but he was wondering why Hokage Gigi wanted him. Naruto got a devilish smile on his face and asked the Anbu, would you like to walk there? The Anbu thought about it and smiled behind his mask and answered, of course Uzumaki-san. Hokage's office. Sarutobi sat patiently at his desk while having a calm discussion with Natsuki and Orochimaru. So Orochimaru, how is being the cage of Otogakur treating you? Orochimaru thought about it and gave him her snake smile which looked ominous on the male Orochimaru. The paperwork is annoying and I got Naruto to tell me his secret to defeating such a formidable enemy. The aging Kage all of a sudden begged, please tell me such a sacred secret. Orochimaru smiled and answered, sorry old man, but you'll have to ask Naruto since I promised not to tell anyone. Sarutobi thought about it but then had to ask, wait, who is doing the paperwork at your village, or are you using that sacred technique that Naruto taught you? Orochimaru smiled and said one name, Kabuto. Otogakur. Kabuto was in the middle of completing a giant stack of paperwork while Orochimaru was on leave for the Junin exams. Damn it, Orochimaru-sama, why am I stuck doing this? Why couldn't you just torture me instead? While he was in thought, he didn't notice the one stack he was on just grow 5 times more, and right when he went back to work he saw the stack and yelled, damn you Orochimaru-sama. Hokage's office. The civilian council on the other hand were both angry with the demon brat for making them wait and scared of the woman with the 9 orange tails with red tips and the fox ears. To some they thought it was just part of the outfit, but to others they knew deep down that it was the Kyuubi, but didn't voice it out that the woman in front of them was the 9 tails waiting to kill all the good civilians that have been mistreating its spawn. Orochimaru couldn't help but grin at the civilians' council that looked like they were about to shit themselves. Finally, after 10 minutes, Naruto and some of the Anbu arrive and the first thing he gets is a fat civilian council man yelling about demon spawns and keeping the almighty council waiting. Well, let's just say his opinion was duly noted and a red chakra claw came out of his throat and the blood splattered on some of the other civilians. The pink-haired Banshee took that time to finally make her Banshee voice known. That demon just killed a civilian, Sarutobi. Kill the demon, hurry before it escapes. Everyone had to cover their ears because of the high-volume screeching that came out of that pink thing. Sarutobi slammed his fist down on his desk and spoke with a defining voice. You will call me Hokage-sama and show me the respect I deserve. Mebuki Haruno, your opinion about demons is noted, and tossed out the door. Sarutobi sat back down and continued. If the civilian council can't behave, then they will be kicked out. You all should be glad I'm letting you stay here since this is a shinobi matter. Sarutobi then pointed at the woman with the Anbu mask that says Kui note on the top of the mask, but what really stood out are the 9 magnificent tails and the 2 fox ears. Sarutobi let them all take a minute until he spoke again. As you see here, this beautiful young lady is the Kyuubi no Kitsune, and before Sarutobi could continue, a fat civilian council member stood up and yelled, impossible. The most powerful creature on earth, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, can't be a woman. Most of the women were glaring at him. Even though the thought of the great and powerful Kyuubi was in front of them was terrifying, most of the women were dancing in joy inside that the most powerful Biju was a woman. I say most women because you all know the one with blonde hair that screams a lot and hates Naruto. Well, actually 2, since it has a pink-haired daughter. Sarutobi signaled his Anbu and the next thing they saw was a headless male civilian. While the civilian council were screaming and crapping their pants, the shinobi council saw nothing wrong with what the Hokage did since that civilian insulted a foreign kunoichi which could lead to war and they did not want to go to war with the mighty Kyuubi no Kitsune. Sarutobi waited until all the screaming was gone and started speaking. Mebuki Haruno, you got a warning and that was the only warning. I will not stand this shit any longer. Your disrespect and foolhardiness will lead us to war with Otogakure. An arrogant civilian council member stood up and yelled, why should we care, they are weak compared to our great village. Sarutobi signaled his Anbu right away and they executed the ignorant but yet arrogant villager right away. The other civilian council members became pale since that the third member that was killed. The shinobi council couldn't help but chuckle and the elder council paled at Sarutobi's newfound determination, especially Danzo. Nitsuki chuckled behind her mask and went behind Naruto and wrapped her arms around his neck which by process she pushed her breasts onto his back and rested her chin on his spiky yet soft hair. Nitsuki is taller than Naruto. Naruto is about 5 feet 8 and Nitsuki is 6 feet. This caused Naruto to have a serious blush on his face. Orochimaru saw the snuggling that Nitsuki was doing with Naruto and wished she could do it too, but right now it's not possible, he sighed. Sarutobi saw the red face that Naruto had while Miss Nitsuki was hugging him from behind and he started having some blood coming out of his nose and a perverted laugh escaped his mouth which didn't get unnoticed by everyone. Sarutobi noticed that everyone was looking at him and he had to cough in his hand twice and put back on his serious face. Sarutobi decided to get back on topic. Now I know that the shinobi and kunoichi in this room know why I had that civilian executed, but I'll humor the council and explain it. He looked around and saw the somewhat interested looks on the elders' faces except for Danzo's and the civilians looked confused. Sarutobi sighed and decided to start with a question. What is the difference between Konoha and Oto? Sarutobi looked around, but he knew that the shinobi council knew the main difference. The Hokage expectantly looked at the civilians for their input for once. Well, he asked. The civilians looked at each other as to see if someone knew. Miss Ruka decided to answer. The size of our village is larger. We had legendary shinobi come from this village which makes our enemies weary and the alliances with other villages. Naruto looked at the middle-aged woman and waved at her and she gave him a wave back and a smile. Sarutobi smiled seeing that Naruto still remembered Miss Ruka. Yes, very nice explanation. The Hokage clapped his hands and soon the shinobi council joined in while the civilians were just glaring and elders didn't really care. Sarutobi then glared at the civilian council making them flinch. Now I know none of you knew the answer and the funny thing is that you all try to take control of shinobi matters while having no idea the extent that our decisions do. The Hokage smiled and said, even though Miss Ruka gave some good points, she wasn't completely correct. Sure we have a bigger village and alliances matter and legendary shinobi come from our village, but we also have a large economy while our military standard has went down because of some people. Sarutobi looked at the civilian council accusingly which made them look down. Sarutobi then stopped glaring at the civilians and continued, you would think all that would matter. But no it doesn't, a Jinchuriki is a big portion of military power and we had the strongest one. Otogakure has Naruto and the Kyuubi who is free to roam around. She alone can destroy this village and the only reason that would happen is because of the trash in this village that she calls the civilians and shinobi kunoichi. The Hokage then looked at Orochimaru and she gave him a distinct nod of approval and Sarutobi smiled. Sarutobi gave Orochimaru the floor and she started speaking. As you all know, I was kicked out of the Hidden Leaf village after Sarutobi found out about my experiments. She sighed and then continued, and I have to say that I was angry to the point of wanting to destroy this village and make everyone suffer, but because of the foolish idiocy this village has shown, I will have to thank you. After she said that everyone looked confused because at one moment Orochimaru was mocking them and then thanking them. Orochimaru saw all the confused faces and decided to illiterate. Before I tell you all the reason, I'm going to reveal something about myself that nobody, not even the Hokage, knew. Everyone was looking on with anticipation, and all of a sudden they saw an explosion of smoke, and instead of Orochimaru stood a gorgeous goddess with smooth pale skin and black hair. They all wondered where Orochimaru went, but it didn't take them long to realize that the person there was Orochimaru, since the snake-like eyes were the clear identification. As you all see, I am female, not male. Now the reason why I changed my mind about destroying this pathetic village is, hey, this mighty village isn't pathetic, you snake whore, yelled a furious civilian. Naruto heard him insult his snake Heim, and he summoned a poisonous snake. The next thing the villager knew was that he was in great amount of pain and screaming, except no sound was coming out of his mouth. The civilian council wanted to shout for the death of the demon brat, but one look from the enraged Hokage stopped them in their tracks. The Hokage stood up and slammed both of his hands on the desk, and with the amount of chakra he was emitting, everyone besides Naruto, Natsuki and Orochimaru were feeling the effects. I will not stand this shit any longer. You all have 2 minutes to leave before I start executing all of you for treason. I find your outburst offensive to our honorary guests, and by the look of it you all want a war with the snake Sanin, Kyuubi and the demon of the sound. The Hokage saw the shinobi council paling at the last named, since they already knew the first two. The Hokage decided to give out some more information who they got rid of, and to just scare them. Yes, young Naruto here, who right now is just a chunin, is a S-class shinobi. He defeated 2 Akatsuki members with the help of Orochimaru, of course, but that is quite a feat by itself, and not just that, he saved the Jinchuruki of Nibi from said Akatsuki members, which I heard from Jiraiya. So it won't be just Otogakure that we would be facing, it would also be Kumogakure. The civilian council was kicked out by force since they wanted to undermine the Hokage's authority again, except for Miss Ruka, so that just left the elders and shinobi council and Miss Ruka, who was allowed to stay since Naruto insisted on it. The Hokage coughed to get everyone's attention and motioned for Orochimaru to continue, which she happily did. Now, as I was saying, the reason I thanked you, well, mostly the civilian council, was because they are the reason that I got to meet my wonderful husband, mate Naruto. The elders and shinobi council gasped, while the Hokage and the Nine Tails were smiling and were happy for Orochimaru. Before anybody could speak up, the Hokage stood up and motioned for Natsuki to stand by the door. Now I know you all have questions, but I have a serious question as well. Everyone waited for the Hokage's question in anticipation. Why do you continue to defy my command? Sarutobi growled out. While he knew who defied his command, he didn't want that person to try to do anything until he had them in chains. Sarutobi breathed out and told the council the orders that he gave out. I said that Orochimaru is welcome here for the Junin exams and is not to be attacked. And you know what happened? She got attacked and lost some shinobi. That alone should be reason enough for her to go to war with us. The shinobi council were lightly sweating at that thought, while the elders looked worried. But Danzo stood out the most, since he was acting the calmest, trying to make it seem like he had nothing to do with it, even though the Hokage already knows that he is the culprit. The Hokage then smiled, which made some of the council members' sweat drop and some others start to become nervous in their seats. The Hokage looked at Orochimaru and said, as of right now, I give full authority to the Otokage to exact the punishment that is due for my negligence. Right when he finished saying that, Orochimaru gave a signal and Danzo was on his knees in front of her with Natsuki and her clone on each side of him. Her chakra was slowly seeping out and everyone could feel the malicious evil chakra just daring for someone to help Danzo. Danzo had it worst since he was in ground zero of that chakra and he could literally see his death coming. He thought about using the Sharingans in his arms, but the Kyuubi's chakra complicated that problem by forcibly shutting them all and pretty much destroying them with her corrupted chakra. Danzo knew he was dead the moment none of his root came to help him, and he wanted to say something that might sway the Hokage's decision, but that chance never came because Orochimaru gave Natsuki the signal and she beheaded Danzo right in front of the council. Please like and subscribe YouTube channel for next part. Thanks for watching this video.